Deep Work by Cal Newport. Introduction. Welcome to this summary of Deep Work by Cal Newport. In the next 30 minutes, you'll discover why the ability to focus without distraction has become both incredibly rare and incredibly valuable in our economy, and more importantly, how you can cultivate this ability to transform your professional life. Cal Newport, a computer science professor at Georgetown University, argues that we're living in a paradox. At the very moment when deep, focused work has become more valuable than ever, we've also made it nearly impossible to achieve. This summary will give you the key insights and practical strategies from the book, so you can reclaim your ability to do deep work and thrive in an increasingly distracted world. Part 1. The idea. Why deep work matters. Chapter 1. Deep work is valuable. Let's start with a fundamental question. What exactly is deep work? Newport defines it as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. Think of a programmer writing complex code, a writer crafting a novel, or a scientist analyzing data without interruption. The opposite is shallow work, non-cognitively demanding, logistical-style tasks often performed while distracted. These tasks don't create much new value and are easy to replicate. Think of answering emails, attending meetings without clear agendas, or scrolling through social media checking for updates. Newport argues that three groups will particularly thrive in the new economy. First, those who can work well with intelligent machines and complex systems. Second, those who are the best at what they do in their field. And third, those with access to capital. For most of us, we need to focus on becoming one of the first two types, and both require the same core abilities: the ability to quickly master hard things and the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. Here's the crucial insight. Both of these abilities depend on your capacity for deep work. Learning complex skills requires intense concentration. You need to focus on the specific skill you're trying to improve and receive feedback so you can correct your approach. Distractions disrupt this process. Similarly, producing valuable output requires sustained attention. The best work happens when you can hold a problem in your mind long enough to make meaningful progress. Newport introduces the concept of attention residue. When you switch from task A to task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow. A residue of your attention remains stuck, thinking about the original task. This is especially thick if your work on task A was unbounded and of low intensity before you switched. The more you multitask, the more attention residue builds up, and the worse your performance becomes. To produce at your peak level, you need to work for extended periods with full concentration on a single task, free from distraction. The great irony is that as deep work becomes more valuable, it's also becoming increasingly rare. Our workplaces are actively hostile to depth. Open office plans, instant messaging, and the expectation of immediate email responses all fragment our attention into slices too small to support deep work. Chapter 2. Deep work is rare. Why is deep work becoming rare when it's so valuable? Newport identifies several culprits. The first is the rise of network tools, particularly email and social media. These tools fragment our days into tiny intervals of distraction. The average knowledge worker checks email once every 6 minutes. This habit makes deep work nearly impossible. The second culprit is the culture of connectivity. Many workplaces now expect immediate responses to messages. This expectation creates a constant obligation to monitor your inbox or chat applications. You can't achieve deep work if you're checking messages every few minutes. Third, there's the metric black hole. In many jobs, it's difficult to directly measure the value produced by specific behaviors. When evaluation becomes difficult, we tend toward busyness as a proxy for productivity. Being visibly busy becomes more important than being genuinely productive. Sending lots of emails, attending lots of meetings, and being constantly available signal that you're working hard, even if these activities prevent you from producing your best work. Newport calls this phenomenon busyness as proxy for productivity. In the absence of clear indicators of what it means to be productive and valuable in their jobs, many knowledge workers turn back toward an industrial indicator, doing lots of stuff in a visible manner. This is deeply problematic because it rewards shallow work over deep work. There's also the issue of technopoly, a term borrowed from Neil Postman. We've developed a culture where we see technology as inherently good and necessary. We adopt new tools not because they clearly help us achieve our goals, but because innovation is seen as virtuous for its own sake. We're hesitant to reject technologies that fragment our attention because doing so seems Luddite. Finally, there's what Newport calls the any benefit mindset toward tool selection. We adopt a tool if we can identify any possible benefit to its use, or if we might miss out on something by not using it. This is a terrible strategy because every tool comes with costs. Social media might offer some benefits, but those benefits must be weighed against the significant costs to your ability to focus. Chapter 3. Deep work is meaningful. Beyond the economic argument for deep work, Newport makes a deeper case. Deep work isn't just profitable, it's also meaningful. Drawing on psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy, he argues that a deep life is a good life. From a neurological perspective, research shows that your brain constructs your worldview based on what you pay attention to. If you spend your time fragmented and distracted, constantly switching between shallow concerns, your mind will reflect that chaos. But if you spend your time in sustained focus on meaningful work, your experience of the world becomes richer and more meaningful. There's fascinating research from psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi on flow, the mental state where you're completely immersed in a challenging activity. Csikszentmihalyi's research revealed that people are happiest when in flow states. Ironically, people report being happier at work than in leisure, because work naturally provides the structured challenges that produce flow. Deep work is a reliable way to generate flow states. From a philosophical perspective, Newport draws on the work of thinkers like Hubert Dreyfus and philosopher Albert Borgman, who argue that a life of depth is more meaningful than a life of distraction. Craftsmanship, whether you're a programmer, writer, or blacksmith, brings meaning through the direct engagement with something real and the skill required to do it well. Shallow work lacks this quality. There's little satisfaction in processing emails or attending unfocused meetings. The point is this: the goal of deep work isn't just to make more money or get promoted, though it will help with those things. The goal is to live well. A deep life is a meaningful life, one filled with rich experiences and genuine accomplishment, rather than the scattered fragments of a distracted existence. Part 2. The rules. How to do deep work. Having established why deep work matters, Newport turns to the practical question: how do you actually do it? The second part of the book provides 4 rules, each with specific strategies you can implement. Rule 1. Work deeply. The first rule recognizes a fundamental reality. You have finite willpower. You can't simply decide to work deeply and expect your willpower to sustain that effort throughout the day. Instead, you need to develop routines and rituals that minimize the willpower necessary to maintain concentration. Newport identifies 4 depth philosophies, different approaches to integrating deep work into your professional life. The monastic philosophy involves maximizing deep work by eliminating or radically minimizing shallow obligations. Think of the author who moves to a cabin to write a book, or the academic who doesn't respond to email. This works for people whose professional success comes from doing one thing exceptionally well, but it's impractical for most of us who have varied professional responsibilities. The bimodal philosophy divides your time, dedicating some clearly defined stretches to deep pursuits while leaving the rest open to everything else. The key is that the deep time needs to be substantial, at minimum, a full day. Carl Jung, for example, would retreat to a cabin for deep thinking, but maintained an active clinical practice in Vienna. This works well for people who can control their schedules and can afford long periods away from shallow work. The rhythmic philosophy argues that the easiest way to consistently start deep work sessions is to transform them into a simple, regular habit. The idea is to generate a rhythm for this work, removing the need to invest energy deciding when to go deep. For example, you might work deeply every morning from 6 to 8 before the workday begins. This is often the most realistic approach for people with traditional employment. The journalistic philosophy involves fitting deep work wherever you can into your schedule. Journalists are trained to shift into writing mode on a moment's notice, and this approach requires the same ability. While this offers the most flexibility, it's also the hardest to execute because it requires the ability to switch into depth quickly. Beyond choosing a philosophy, you need to develop rituals. Where will you work? For how long? How will you support your work? Will you start with coffee? Take breaks every 90 minutes? The specifics don't matter as much as the consistency. Your ritual should minimize the decisions you need to make, preserving your willpower for the work itself. Newport also discusses the concept of grand gestures. Sometimes, making a significant commitment to deep work can help you achieve it. J.K. Rowling checked into a luxury hotel to finish one of the Harry Potter books. The financial commitment and change of environment increased her motivation and focus. You might not need a luxury hotel, but going to a library or coffee shop specifically for deep work can create a similar effect. Another key strategy is to avoid working alone. While you need solitude for deep work itself, collaboration during the right moments can push your results to a higher level. The insight here, drawn from business literature on innovation, is that serendipitous encounters between different types of thinkers can spark creative breakthroughs. The key is to collaborate deeply, then return to solitude to work through the implications. Finally, Newport emphasizes the importance of execution. Drawing on business literature, he highlights the 4 disciplines of execution. First, focus on the wildly important. The more you try to do, the less you accomplish. Second, act on lead measures rather than lag measures. A lag measure is the thing you're ultimately trying to improve, like papers published. A lead measure is a behavior that drives success on the lag measure, like hours spent in deep work. Third, keep a compelling scoreboard. Track your deep work hours visually to maintain motivation. Fourth, create a cadence of accountability. Review your scoreboard regularly and plan your deep work for the coming week. Rule 2. Embrace boredom. The ability to concentrate is a skill that must be trained. If you're constantly seeking distraction, you're training your mind to crave it. Even if you schedule time for deep work, you won't be able to achieve it if your mind expects constant stimulation. The key insight is that efforts to deepen your focus will struggle if you don't simultaneously wean yourself from distraction. Just as athletes must train outside of competition, you must train your concentration ability outside of your scheduled deep work sessions. Newport recommends scheduling internet use in advance. Rather than avoiding distraction when you want to focus, schedule the times when you'll use the internet and avoid it altogether outside these times. For example, you might schedule internet blocks at 10, noon, and 3. Outside these times, you go offline completely. This approach forces you to resist distraction even when you're not doing deep work, strengthening your concentration muscles. This doesn't mean you need to eliminate the internet from your life. The point isn't to reduce the total amount of time you spend online. The point is to give yourself practice resisting the urge to switch to distraction. Even if you schedule frequent internet blocks, the act of waiting until your scheduled time strengthens your ability to focus. Another strategy is to work like Teddy Roosevelt. As a student at Harvard, Roosevelt packed his schedule with activities, but still excelled academically. How? By working with blistering intensity during the limited time he gave to his studies. Newport suggests identifying deep tasks and giving yourself hard deadlines that drastically reduce the time available. The intensity required to meet these deadlines trains your focus. Finally, Newport recommends productive meditation. Take a period when you're occupied physically but not mentally, like walking or commuting, and focus your attention on a single, well-defined professional problem. This practice strengthens your ability to think deeply and resist distraction, while also moving your work forward. Rule 3. Quit social media. This is perhaps Newport's most controversial rule, but his argument is straightforward. Network tools like social media are particularly harmful to deep work, and most people would be better off quitting them. Newport isn't arguing that these tools offer no benefits. He's arguing that their benefits don't outweigh their costs. The any-benefit approach to tool selection is flawed. Just because a tool offers some benefit doesn't mean you should use it. The question is whether the benefits substantially outweigh the costs. To evaluate tools properly, Newport recommends the craftsman approach. Identify the core factors that determine success and happiness in your professional and personal life, and adopt a tool only if its positive impacts on these factors substantially outweigh its negative impacts. For most people, when they honestly apply this test to social media, they find that these tools don't pass. Yes, social media helps you stay connected with friends. But does it substantially improve your social life compared to more intentional forms of connection? Often not. Meanwhile, the costs are substantial. These tools fragment your attention, reduce your ability to focus, and consume enormous amounts of time. Newport also challenges the fear of missing out. Many people worry that if they quit social media, they'll miss important information or opportunities. But this fear is largely unfounded. The important things still reach you. The news that matters gets to you through other channels. What you miss is the trivial and the distracting, which is exactly what you want to miss. One specific strategy is the 30-day social media detox. Quit all social media for 30 days. Don't announce it. Don't deactivate accounts. Just stop using them. After 30 days, ask yourself 2 questions. Would the last 30 days have been notably better if I had been able to use this service? Did people care that I wasn't using this service? If your answer is no to both, quit the service permanently. If your answer is yes to either, return to using it. Finally, Newport recommends putting more thought into your leisure time. One reason we default to low-quality leisure like social media is that we haven't planned anything better. If you give your mind something meaningful to do in your free time, you'll be less tempted by distraction. Rule 4. Drain the shallows. The final rule focuses on reducing shallow work to create more space for deep work. Even after you've scheduled deep work time, learned to focus, and quit distracting tools, Shallow work will still try to consume your day. You need to actively push back. First, schedule every minute of your day. This doesn't mean being rigid or inflexible. The point is to be thoughtful about how you spend your time rather than reacting to whatever seems most urgent. Create time blocks for different types of work, including deep work, shallow work, and breaks. When your schedule gets disrupted, which it will, simply revise it. The act of scheduling forces you to confront the reality of how much time things actually take. Second, quantify the depth of every activity. For each task on your plate, ask, how long would it take to train a smart, recent college graduate with no specialized training in my field to complete this task? If the answer is not long, that's shallow work. If the answer is months or years, that's deep work. Use this metric to identify which tasks truly require your skills and which could be delegated or eliminated. Third, ask your boss for a shallow work budget. What percentage of your time should be spent on shallow work? For most jobs with significant creative or analytical responsibilities, this should be 30 to 50%. Having this conversation explicitly can help you push back on shallow work requests and protect your deep work time. Fourth, finish your work by 5:30. Newport calls this fixed schedule productivity. Commit to not working past a certain time, then work backward to find strategies to honor that commitment. This constraint forces you to be more selective about which shallow tasks you take on and more efficient with your shallow work time. Finally, become hard to reach. Make people who send you email do more work. For example, you might use a sender filter on your contact page. I only respond to proposals that include X, Y, and Z information. Do more work when you send or reply to emails. Rather than quick, ambiguous responses that spawn endless back and forth, invest the time to provide a thorough response that closes the loop. Don't respond to emails where there's no good response. Not every email deserves a reply. If a message is ambiguous, not really about anything important, or would generate more work than it's worth, simply don't respond. Conclusion. Let's bring this all together. Deep work is both a manifesto and a manual. Newport argues convincingly that the ability to focus deeply is becoming more valuable just as it's becoming more rare. Those who cultivate this ability will thrive. Those who don't will struggle. The path forward involves 4 rules. First, work deeply by developing routines and rituals that support sustained focus. Second, embrace boredom by training your ability to resist distraction even outside your deep work sessions. Third, quit social media and other network tools that fragment your attention without providing proportionate benefits. Fourth, drain the shallows by ruthlessly minimizing the time you spend on work that doesn't require deep thinking. This isn't easy. Our culture pushes us toward distraction and shallow work at every turn. But the rewards for resisting this push are enormous. By committing to deep work, you'll produce better results in less time. You'll master difficult skills more quickly. You'll create work that matters. And perhaps most importantly, you'll live a richer, more meaningful life. The world is full of distraction, but depth is still possible. It requires intention, discipline, and the willingness to swim against the current. But for those who make this commitment, the results are transformative. Thank you for listening to this summary of Deep Work by Cal Newport. If these ideas resonate with you, I highly encourage you to read the full book, which contains many more examples, research studies, and practical strategies. More importantly, I encourage you to start implementing these principles today. Choose one strategy, perhaps scheduling your first deep work session or taking a break from social media, and see what happens. The deep life is waiting for you.